It's Wednesday, April 24th, and we are back. You got Goose, you got Coach, and today we're joined with Parker Honeyman, Chief Operations Officer, Community Management, and Business Development with Zel. And you're inside the core. Fellas, what's going on?
Hey, Coach.
What's going on, Coach?
No, not much, man. Very excited about having Parker on to join us this time. It's his first time on the podcast, and does a ton behind the scenes for Zel and for ZelCore. And one of the big things that kind of came out today here was the release of version 1.50 entitled Chain. Parker, would you mind kind of getting us rolling, talking a little bit about that update?
Sure. As you said, the code name for this release was Chain. That being the biggest single feature that was released was the addition of the BNB, the Binance mainnet chain. So that is released today in preparation for ultimately the BinanceDEX and being able to trade the assets on the BNB mainnet chain. Some other larger features that were released in this 1.5.0. There's now data or hex payloads available as options for Ethereum and Ethereum Classic transactions. And then there's been some additional features added to each wallet inside of the ZelCore account system. So if you're already a user, you might have noticed that you have 3 completely separate wallets, so 3 addresses for each asset. You can now set customized assets for each wallet. If you've ever used the Smartify feature, so if you forget that you have coin, you forget that you have some Raven, and you click Smartify, it'll go see that your Raven address has some value in it, and it'll activate it for you in your wallet. Other things like notifications of asset management, maintenance, forks, things like that are also displayed in ZelCore now. So those are the main features of this latest release.
Oh, you guys have certainly been busy.
Yeah, the biggest single feature was that Binance mainnet activation, but a lot of just the maintenance and the addition of more features. Every once in a while we'll have a big dump of new assets added. So there's definitely 24/7 level of work to be done to keep ZelCore going forward, and it's been happening pretty regularly.
Yeah, man, and kind of as we launched our last podcast yesterday, me and Goose kind of grazed the surface a little bit of talking about updates and upgrades. The Zel upgrade 3.1.1, kind of dealing with our ZelNodes, and obviously you wrote a nice little write up about it. And just is there anything that you could kind of mention or talk about in regards to the ZelNode upgrade?
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. I'm very passionate about the ZelNodes since I spent a majority of my time working on those since January. But yeah, basically, it's an ever evolving system. We're using pieces from projects that have been successful in the past, mixing them with some of our own kind of unique features, and ultimately coming up with our own version of what we think, what people technically call master nodes, but we're developing into what we're calling computational nodes that actually have value and can perform more than just transactional verification on the network. So the reason I say that is as we go forward, sometimes we do large updates, sometimes we do little updates. This last one was relatively little in the terms of like what it says on the release notes. But what we changed was we added a bunch more seeder nodes, which essentially every time someone stands up a ZelNode and it tries to sync to the blockchain, it uses these seeder nodes to supply it a list of nodes to sync from. And if that part's slow, if it takes a while to get that list, then syncing will be slow. And then it'll take longer for the node to stand up. And that kind of cascades down into slower performance overall. So the biggest change was we added a bunch more seeder nodes all over the world to try to kind of make a little mesh so nobody's too far away from a seeder node at any given time when they stand up their own ZelNode. And the main benefit to that is all the ZelNodes are all synced together in this decentralized network archetype. and the communications between them have sped up substantially. So everybody's in sync with each other. Everybody knows who's getting paid when and where, and it's really equalized the rewards payouts. So some people might have seen that there was a little up and down, like every couple of days with rewards. Sometimes you'd have more, sometimes less. Right now, it's a lot more even keel. So it should be more steady, and that's what we're ultimately going for, is a very steady reward system, consistent payouts, things like that.
Well, that's for sure. We saw that. We actually talked about that yesterday in our previous podcast about the upgrade, more or less just sort of talking about the benefits. And that is probably the most noticeable benefit of that upgrade, is that all of our payouts are consistent. Like I could tell you right now, my super node, it pays out just about every 7 hours, like consistently. And I know that will go up or down depending on how many super nodes there are on the network, but it's just nice to know that it's reliably consistent.
Yeah, and that'll always be, one of our top priorities is that the regularity of payouts is intertwined with fairness of the network and fairness to the node operators. So we always want to kind of go towards a deterministic payout scheme. Just not saying that's what we're going to do in the future. Nobody knows right now, but we want it to be consistent and reliable for both the node operator and anybody using the network in the future.
So since you spun up all these seeder nodes, can we expect that they would also speed up the amount of time it takes to download the blockchain, like when you start a new full node wallet?
Sure. So the seeder nodes are going to speed up your initial connection. So the first time you stand up a full node, it kind of has to build a peers list. So it goes and tries to connect to some, and if it can, it blocks it and unconnects, and then so it'll speed up that first like 30 minutes to an hour of building that peers list. It probably won't speed up the actual syncing of the chain. That is kind of just the way it is, unfortunately. It is definitely a slow process. It's also a lot of data. For now, the seeder nodes will make everything more reliable. It should keep everything in sync, but as far as I know, it's not going to actually speed up the syncing process. That would be some other update in the future.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good thing too, because the sooner you can be synced with your full node wallet, the sooner you could spin up a ZelNode. And that's actually part of the process of installing a ZelNode, is that especially if you use the script that was developed by the team, the scripting team added lines to download the bootstrap so that it would greatly increase the amount of speed of the spinning up process. It just gets synced much quicker doing it that way. So yeah, that's great. It's great to see that there's some movement towards that convenience. This really just comes down to convenience, if you ask me, because I mean, in this world of crypto where 24 hours feels like a week, you know how like waiting to get your blockchain synced is just, it feels like forever. So it's nice that we've got some alternatives. There are a couple of videos on our YouTube channel that discuss how you can download a copy of the Bootstrap and put it in the correct place so that it will help you sync your ZelCore full node wallet much quicker. I'll have links to that down in the descriptions below. But as we look forward to this new release 1.5, which is out right now. Now, this is just sort of, we're getting the preliminaries for the even more significant release of ZelCore Plus, right? So 1.5.0 is called Chain because we've incorporated the BNB Chain mainnet, and that also is pretty much setting the stage for the BinanceDEX, which is going to be packaged as part of our ZelCore Plus release. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what we can expect with that release in terms of the DEX, especially because we know there's other API features and whatnot, but the main thing is the fact that the DEX is available to any ZelCore user, right?
Right. Yeah. So, and that's a good clarifying point, because some people have been confused because everything's kind of happening at once with ZelCore Plus and the Binance integrations. The Binance Chain, BinanceDEX, all those features are going to be available for everybody, like you said, Goose. and available for free. It's all part of ZelCore standard download. So anybody who has ZelCore can access the Binance chain, Binance assets, all that incorporated into the BinanceDEX. So, and that'll be separate, completely separate from ZelCore Plus, which will be kind of the premium plan, additional features, like you were saying with the API integrations.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to using it myself because it is such an interesting incorporation of technology, because you have all of your wallets available right there and all of the assets that could potentially be traded on the DEX. Now, right now, and we had mentioned this yesterday in our podcast as well, that we noticed the DEX has launched, but we didn't really know what to expect, and because there's no assets listed on it just yet. So can you give us maybe a little insight as to perhaps what might be going on behind the scenes? I had speculated a little bit, but I think I was way off. So what might be going on right now that we're just waiting for an asset to be added?
Yeah, I think I think it's all speculation at this point. From the news has been a little light on what's going on, and I think they got their chain launched and it was successful, and they're working diligently and hard trying to get the DEX ready. So once the mainnet was launched for the chain yesterday, there still needs to be some testing. You can only get so far on testnet. So kind of what I'm thinking is they're taking their time and kind of feeling out mainnet now that it's fully launched, and it's a smart idea to add assets one at a time instead of trying to out the door say, hey, we support 10 assets and this brand new platform that's never been done at this scale. So
right.
Yeah, again, speculation, but I guess that's where I place my money, is kind of a concerted rollout and try to see how it works.
Well, good news is that since ZelCore's work is pretty much finished on creating the integrated BinanceDEX into ZelCore, really what that means is that as soon as Binance lists their first coin on the DEX, it should automatically show up in ZelCore, right?
Yes, the assets, the ability to interact with like a pair, a trading pair, should be built in to the integration of the DEX, and then basically we are just waiting to get the word that we can release the DEX functionality. So, we just had 1.5.0 go out with the chain. There'll be another update for the DEX functionality, and then there'll be another update for the ZelCore Plus towards the end of the month. So yeah, once those updates are out, it should be pretty streamlined, and you can, a user can use the DEX essentially.
Oh, that's excellent.
See how it feels.
Yeah, so we're looking at then 2 more releases. So we had one release today. We're going to have another release, likely tomorrow for the DEX, and then there'll be a ZelCore Plus release at the end of the month.
Correct. Yeah, we're still waiting to hear about the DEX. But yeah, I mean, we're ready, like you said. So I would think in the next couple of days that would likely go out.
Okay, good news.
That's very exciting. It will be a great close of the month.
Yeah, it's definitely the everything's stacked up kind of accidentally, or by random. So it's definitely a lot of things happening in the second half of April.
Good. Well, this is probably a good time for us to kind of close it down here as we look to be talking again here pretty shortly. Looking to get a couple more team members on to talk about their different aspects of how they're working to make all of these exciting things happen. And so Parker, Chief Operations Officer of Zel, we sure appreciate you spending some time with Goose and myself today, man. And thank you for all your hard work that you do behind the scenes and out with the community as well.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on the podcast. Very exciting. I'm happy to do the first one of hopefully many.
Yeah, no doubt.
The pleasure is all ours, man. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
And for our listeners, we invite you to join the Zel community. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at ZelCash for our Zel account. and at Zel_core for the ZelCore account. And you can join us in Discord by visiting discord.io/Zel. And as always, thanks for listening. Until next time, you've been inside the core, powered by Zel.